Tom Davis has mastered the art of having a productive day. He has not just one job, he does three different things and more. He, of course, is working with the Big West, going into a second season, Associate Commissioner for External Relations, Chief Marketing Officer. You can also find him as an adjunct professor, and you can also find him writing, producing, directing, and being a creative with Caught Looking Incorporated. So he is all over the map doing so many great things. And at the bottom line of everything he does is he gets stuff done. He finds solutions, which makes him such a marketable person in sports media and in the sports industry. And on this episode of the On to Something podcast, I'm Bryan Fenley, a national anchor at Fox Sports Radio, a volleyball broadcaster in the Big West, and also tennis broadcaster for the USTA. We are going to look at Tom's career, point out the inspirational elements and what he's been able to do, how he's been able to do it. First thing I want to do, Tom, as I welcome you in here, take me into your life right now and how you fit everything in.
Well, first off, Bryan, I think my wife would disagree that I'm a guy who gets things done. She's got quite a list of things that I need to accomplish on a daily basis, and I'm doing my very best to knock down that list on a daily basis. But if she heard you say I'm a guy who gets things done, she might say, "Yeah, wait till he gets home. I'll show you a few things." But no, the thing, Bryan, I tell people all the time is that I still have the mentality of a 7-year-old. And what I mean by that is when you ask a 7-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? You say, I want to be a professional baseball player and an astronaut and a cowboy and all these different things. I still have that mentality at 55, right? I still think I can do all of these different things that I want to do. And I've been fortunate to be able to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do. So, the great thing for me, Bryan, is that every day is different. Every day is a little bit unique, but in every day I get to do something that I really love to do. And I don't have to I don't have to choose, right? I love writing and I love, producing and directing and college athletics and teaching other people and all these different things. And I get to do them all. And I just think that's so great that I don't have to choose. I didn't have to just, and no disrespect to the fine people who work at, Geico or State Farm or anything like that, but I didn't have to just be that person and be in that, be in that trench and just, okay, today is going to be insurance and tomorrow's going to be insurance. And the day after that, every day for me is a little bit different. And I think that's kind of cool. And, will I ever get to the, 7-year-old Valhalla of cowboy and fireman and professional baseball player? Maybe not, but I feel like I have the grown-up version of that, which I think is pretty cool.
The diversity of your skill set is, I would think, like you said, very rewarding because every day is different. And when some can be so centrally focused on something, the fact that you have such a wide palette of talents makes you, like we said, that much more marketable. One of the things you're working on right now is with the Big West and putting a lot of your effort and concentration in growing the brand and changing the narrative and boosting up that conference. How do you find your experiences being able to help this conference take the next step as far as the perception it has in this country?
Well, I think, and I say this from my own experience, right? I mean, I've lived in Southern California for 25 years. And until Dan Butterly, the commissioner at the Big West, got the job in the Big West, I'm not sure, gun to my head, I could name every school in the league. So, that was an education, and I couldn't be more squarely, Bryan, in the target market than I am, right? I'm a dude who grew up, loving sports and wishing he was a better athlete, and then got the chance to work in sports and that sort of thing. So, just using me as an audience of one, I was like, you know what, we've got to do a better job of informing people, like, who's in this league and, what do we stand for? What are we about? What are the, and when you start to dig in, when I started to dig in on the Big West, and you look at, 11 different schools, 10 in California, you have a pretty, almost an even mixture of Cal State universities and UCs. There's some really impressive academic and athletic histories here that I just don't know if people know. So, for me, when we were looking at the brand, I was just like, you know what, we need to figure out who and what we are, and then bring that forward as much as possible. So we did a pretty extensive rebranding process that involved doing a lot of research. We talked to over 2,200 different people who had some stake in the Big West, from presidents and chancellors to student athletes to members of the media, and just a broad cross section of people who had some skin in the game as it relates to the Big West. And so we sort of redefined who we were. And the thing that I always joke with people now is, now we have to actually be what we said we are. we we came up with all of these great things that we said that we were, and now we have to actually be that. And that's the challenge every day now is, how do I express that in a way that people can grasp on and understand and get behind? Because really, nobody jumps on a sinking ship. I mean, I would hope that everybody who looks at where the Big West is now says, that's a league that we want to be a part of. That's something that we want to find out more about. And just creating that idea of where a league on the rise, we're a league on the move, we're changing the way that things are done. That's kind of what excites me about being a part of the Big West. If you look at my history, Bryan, I'm a guy who likes to build things. I found out pretty early on, I probably am not the guy to hire at Nike or Apple or places like that where things are going well, and they go, you know what, kid, everything's going great. Just don't upset the apple cart and everything will be fine. I'm not that guy. I'm a guy who likes to build stuff or turn things around or change things. And I actually probably am a little less interested in hey, everything's great, because I again, going back to the 7-year-old mentality, I want to be able to say at the end of the day, Bryan, things are messed up because I messed them up, or things are great because I helped make them great, right? But to just sort of be in that middle of like, you know what, we were going to roll the ball and the pins were going to fall down, or if we didn't roll the ball, the pins were still going to fall down because it's Apple or it's Nike or it's, that kind of thing. Like that just sort of never really interested me in my career as, being somebody that worked at a place that sort of, succeeded in spite of itself, if you will, or just succeeded because it's such a massive operation. I wanted to be the person at the end of the day who could say, well, for better or worse, I put my hand on it and this is the way it turned out. And so that's kind of what I've, been searching for and finding, fortunately for me, my entire career.
Tom Davis is our guest. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. So I think about you being 7 years old, somebody who likes to build, and I picture right now Tom Davis building Legos all over the place. And I feel like if you weren't doing what you were doing right now, if you were looking for a fourth job, maybe you would be a Lego engineer. No, I'm just kidding. But when it comes to you testing yourself, and when it comes to what this conference has done as far as growing you professionally, where do you find that the case?
In terms of what the Big West has provided?
The efforts that you've done, how has that stretched you and allowed you to grow from a professional standpoint in being someone who, like you said, does so many different things in sports media, but is now taking on a new venture that allows you to learn and figure out things that maybe you hadn't really done or worked with before, but obviously you have the ability to do it?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've never worked in a conference environment before. I was fortunate enough to be the marketing director at Southern Illinois when I was 23 years old. I had no idea what I was doing, but fortunately, the people there just let me make my mistakes sort of face forward, and I made a ton of them. But they just let me do stuff. And then I moved on to Marquette University later on and ended up working at UCLA. So I've been on sort of all parts of, kind of like the low major, the mid major, the major level from an institutional perspective, but I've never worked at a conference before. So, that whole mindset has been something that I've had to learn. And the idea of, when you work at an institution, with, be it UCLA or, Southern Illinois or wherever it is, you have a certain, a certain narrative, right? We're pushing the Bruins, we're pushing the Salukis, we're pushing, whatever. From a conference perspective, you're telling a broad story. You're telling the story of 11 institutions. It's not just one, right? So your mindset changes. And so when I think about the things that we're doing, from a broadcast perspective, from a content perspective, and everything, I'm looking at it through a completely different lens than I've ever looked at it in my professional career. I know how to do it when I'm just thinking about one institution, but now I'm thinking about 11. So how does that change things? So, for me, that's a challenge, and that's exciting, and that's interesting. The same thing, I'm older in my career than I was when I first met Dan Butterly, the commissioner who I mentioned before. Dan and I have known each other forever. I've known Dan since he had hair, and it's been a long time since Dan had hair. But now at this age, this means a lot more to me, and to have the opportunity to work with a friend, and to really stand side by side with him is super cool. And that's been a lot of fun. That's been as great as any sort of professional challenge or professional opportunity has just been the chance to work with people that I like. And that's something that with the caught looking thing, that was always my mantra, was like, I want to work with people that I like and do stuff that I'm interested in. And that's why I started that company, and that's why that company continues to this day. Is there's still stuff I'm interested in, and there's still a lot of people that I like that I haven't had a chance to work with yet.
That is a preview of some really neat content that is going to come out. I feel like I'm on the edge of my seat here. I'm watching a movie trailer, and we're going to check that out. But with relationship building being such at the core of who you are, where do you think you are in your career without your ability to cultivate and really grow relationships over the course of your career?
Oh, nowhere. I'm still living in Carbondale, Illinois, where I grew up. And that's not a knock on Carbondale, Illinois, because I lived there for a very long time. But, without the relationships that I've been able to forge throughout my career, and, the belief that other people had in me when maybe I didn't even see it in myself, I wouldn't have gone anywhere or done anything. When I think back on, and this was something that was instilled in me like really early on when I was in college, and I was a volunteer assistant in the athletic department. My mentor, Bruce McCutcheon, who eventually ended up being the longtime athletic director at Lafayette College. And Bruce has since retired, but, he said something to the effect of, no one gets ahead without somebody pulling somebody up. And I was like, and when I got closer to the end of my career as an undergraduate, I remember having a conversation with him, just, kind of just being thankful and just saying, how can I help? How can I possibly repay, what you've given me? And he said, I know you don't believe this, but someday you're going to be in the position that I'm in. And when somebody like you comes to somebody, like me, help them, just help somebody. And so, I've never forgotten that, and always tried to be that person, that was trying to help somebody, and trying to pull somebody up. And that goes to the teaching aspect. The whole idea behind teaching was, I want good people in my profession. And if I can help get a few more good people in my profession by virtue of, maybe teaching them a few things that I've learned along the way, then terrific. And if I, can also find people who maybe by going through and understanding what the athletics life is like, if they decide, this isn't for me, that's great too. No is an acceptable answer, which I don't know that enough people sort of, embrace these days, Bryan, from the perspective of, every no gets you a little bit closer to yes. And just because something might not be for you, okay, now that's not for you. So what is for you? What can you take from that experience and push it forward into the next experience? I know I don't want this, but I do want that. I know I'm not very good at this, but I really enjoy that. You know, trying to figure out which doors are open and which doors are closed at any given time, I think is a skill in and of itself that not a lot of people have, or not a lot of people have without a lot of deliberate thought. So I'm always trying to think about what are the options that are available to you at any given time, and then trying to exploit those. And that's building relationships, fortunately for me, has been something that has really paid dividends for me in my career. I haven't gone anywhere or achieved anything professionally without the help of somebody who knew me, or somebody who liked me, or somebody who saw, hey, I saw you did this, can you do this for us, kind of a thing. So and I don't know that that's really unique to me. I think that maybe that's the way the world works, just in general. But I think building strong relationships has been hopefully one of the hallmarks of what I'm about professionally. Hopefully people would say that I've been a good steward of their friendship, and a good person, and somebody who could answer the bell when called on. That's what I want to be anyway. So hopefully that's what I've been. And that goes back to my dad working for the power company in Illinois, and being the guy who everybody knew. And I thought that was cool. Like, gosh, everybody knows my dad. And it sucked when we were kids, right? Because my brother and I, my older brother is 2 years older, we would go anywhere, and you could not go to the gas station, the grocery store, anywhere with my dad and have it just be run in and run out, right? My dad would see somebody he knew, or somebody would stop him, or that sort of thing, and you had this long conversation and blah blah blah. And 7-year-old me or 10-year-old me or whatever, I just wanted to, Dad, come on, man, what are you doing? But now I get it, right? And I see what he was doing, and so in a way, I guess I've carried that forward. Which I don't know if I've meant to do that, or if that's just the stuff that rubs off on you from being around people who sort of make their living by having strong relationships. And certainly my father did for many, many years.
How does the 7-year-old you, the 10-year-old you, the 55-year-old you look at your father as a source of everything that you've done, Tom, is to try to meet his expectations, or your perceived expectations he has for you, and that this has been your life, a sequence of looking for his validation all along?
Yeah, no doubt about that. Unfortunately, my dad passed away a few years ago, but we did have some really nice conversations before he passed, just about the things that I was able to accomplish, the things that I was able to do, and just how cool he thought it all was. And I didn't really think about, I don't know that it registered, Bryan, at the time that that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing, right? And so it was really cool, as he got, into his 80s and stuff like that, then now I was the guy, we would go places and he couldn't get me out of the store, right? Because I'd see somebody that I knew, or that sort of thing, so that was really different, but it was kind of cool in a way too. And when we did the 51 Dons documentary for ESPN, he thought that was the coolest thing. The one radio interview that I did about that documentary, I did in Knoxville, Tennessee, where my father lived, because he set it up. The only interview I did, but I did one morning drive time radio interview because my father set it up for me. And so he just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And so, I look back now when I watch that, and I think about, him and just, he was a child of that era, the 50s. And so he just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And so, by virtue, it has a different meaning for me now than maybe it did before when we first got into it.
You said earlier how, and playing off your father and everything that he gave for you and to you, and how you, as someone who cares so much And here's the thing I wanted to say. You said it's not unique about you, about the power of relationship building. That's generally understood. But what is unique about you, I believe, Tom, is how much you give back. Like, people generally don't do that as much as you do, which is something that I wanted to highlight here on this conversation, is that it's one thing to build off relationships, but it's another thing to teach and to give back in a way in which I feel like so much of your calling and what you do is giving back. And that's a constant theme in your life. You talked about how in doing so, you want to pick others up. What is the situation, Tom, when you picked yourself up?
Oh gosh, all the time. Um, you know, being an entrepreneur, being somebody who's in business for themselves, you get told no a lot. Um, and uh, the interesting thing, Brian, I worked for DirecTV for nearly 7 years. And when you have DirecTV on your business card, people generally take your call, and they're generally interested, whether real or imagined, in what you have to say. And then eventually, when you go out on your own and your name is on your business card, or Caught Looking is on your business card, and you're calling on some of those same people, it's amazing how hard it is to get them on the phone, how uninterested in they are in what you have to say, and that sort of thing. So, I always tell people, if you want to be humble, just be an entrepreneur for, a little while, because you get told no a lot. And that's okay. I sort of expected that going in, as I tell people all the time. People don't pay me to take my ideas. They just pay me to give my ideas. And, so I'm happy to, share the ideas that I have and the knowledge that I have and so forth. But, I fully expect that people are going to say no a lot, and they have to this point. I expect that will continue for, as long as I'm around. And that's okay, because I think, nothing that is worthwhile is gained without a little bit of resistance or a little bit of sacrifice on somebody's part. And so to me, when I hear no, or when I sort of meet resistance, it's sort of like, okay, now the fight's on. All right, here we go. Now it's time to actually earn some money and do something, interesting and creative. If it was all easy, as I tell people all the time, it's like, if this was easy, any idiot could do it, because believe me, I'm that idiot, right? But the challenge that you have, I think, professionally, is, how do you react when things don't go your way? How do you react when you're told no? How do you react in times of adversity? Do you fly off the handle? Do you curl up in a ball in the fetal position and cry your eyes out? I've probably done both of those things. But what I'd like to think that I'm going to do is say, okay, there's a little bit of adversity here. It's not exactly what I expected. But let's figure out a way. Let's figure out a way to overcome it, or to change it, or to make the outcome as good as we can be. The great philosopher Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. I fully expect to get punched in the face, and then we figure it out from there. And so, it happens to me a lot. It happens to me on a daily basis. Things not going exactly as how I plan them. But the benefit of being as old as I am, I guess, is that it doesn't throw me off anymore. I just sort of expect it, and then it's like, okay, what are we going to do now, and how are we going to move forward? And hopefully, the people that I work with, the people that I touch, see that in me, and see that, like, oh, okay, he's not going to fall to pieces when the chips are down. He's going to be somebody who's going to figure out a way to make it work. And maybe it's not going to be the greatest solution in the history of time, but he is going to come up with something. He is going to, at the end of the day, he is going to deliver something. And that's something I think I can take pride in, throughout my career. And I'm, totally happy with that.
Speaking of delivering something,
Mm-hmm.
you had an opportunity to, as far as a broadcast is concerned, put on Battle Frog. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what it is. Is it a little bit of this, a little bit of that? It's a really, like, you almost invented a sport here, Tom.
Yep.
And I see all sorts of different sports involved here that were all because of outside the box thinking.
Mhm.
What led you to create a sport? And then how did you put that on television? When all you hear, or not all you hear, but a lot of times when you hear no, what was it about a yes that said, we're going to do this? We're going to start this sport. We're going to put it on television, and people are going to definitely be tuning in.
Well, I'll tell you exactly how that worked out. So, uh, first off, I have to give credit to my partners in that endeavor, Ron Lisinski and Danny Llewellyn. Um, and they were also my partners on the 51 Dons project. So we did the 51 Dons project, and so we were sort of a known entity, if you will, to ESPN. And so they said, after the 51 Dons project, they were kind of like, okay, well, what else you guys have? And so at that time, I was kind of joking, but kind of serious. I was like, well, these mud run things are pretty popular. And it was at the time when everybody and their sister, from Spartan Race to everything, everybody had a mud run company, right? And they were all these different events and things like that. So I was like, well, these things are kind of popular. And so then ESPN threw in, well, yeah, and college rivalry is kind of cool too. What if we got, some of the biggest college rivals in the world to go head to head in some sort of a bracket style thing with this mud running thing? And so so then we took that idea and sort of looked at, kind of the state of, what is a mud run or a obstacle course race, as they call them, what does that really entail? And what that entailed at that time, Brian, was, you run maybe like a mile or 3/4 of a mile, and you hit an obstacle and you do the obstacle, and then you run for like another mile or quarter mile and you hit another obstacle and whatever. And so we thought the running part was boring. So we thought, well, what if all the obstacles are together? And we started to think about it. I don't know if you remember this back in the day, but my goal in life when I was, again, 7 or 10, was to be on the Superstars. You remember the Superstars, or Battle of the Network
Oh,
Stars was the other
sure.
one, right? They both had an obstacle course, right? And so I was like, this is my chance to do the Battle of the Network Stars obstacle course. I wanted to be on TV so I could be on that show. I didn't want to be on TV so that I could be on, like Happy Days or like whatever was popular when I was a kid. I wanted to be on Battle of the Network Stars. That was the only thing I wanted to do. Right. So we sort of had this idea of like, oh, okay, well, we can take this sort of, a little bit of old and a little bit of new. We can, throw the mud run thing in there. We can throw the college rivalry piece in there. We can, take the old school, Battle of the Network Stars or Superstars obstacle course thing. We can kind of throw all that stuff in a blender, and Battle Frog is what came out of that. And Battle Frog was a company that was in the obstacle course racing space at the time. They were looking to make a name for themselves. And so they were the ones who, they built all the obstacles and everything that we did. So we sort of got married up with them. So just, I think about that experience, Brian, and so many things had to go right, and they did. The thing I say to people all the time when when you talk about, things being on television is, every project dies 1,000 times before it succeeds. It's a miracle anything gets on television. When you just think about like all the potholes and obstacles along the way of, and even with that show, we did it for 2 years, thank God. But even with that show, there were so many days where I'm like, okay, it's dead. We're not going to do it. And then like, oh wait, but it's back again. And then we would, we'd go along, and then, oh wait a minute, we ran into this problem. Oh, it's dead. Okay, well that was fun, but maybe we can take it out and do something with it later on or something like that. So yeah, so we created a sport. We created what we called sprint obstacle course racing. And we were maybe a little bit ahead of our time in terms of ESPN 8, the Ocho. Now they've got cornhole, and they've got all arm wrestling and all these different things on there. But it was a super fun thing to do. It's Ron and Danny are still good friends, and we talk all the time about that experience. I had to live in Atlanta for like a month and I ate at the same restaurant like every day, which was not great. But it was a cool experience, and it all happened because of the 51 Dons thing, and the ESPN folks just going, well, what else you got? And we just kind of decided it was time to come up with an idea, and that was the best idea we had at that time.
That idea went well. And I feel like Tom and Tom Davis is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. That you putting on Battle Frog, having that obstacle course is sort of symbolic of your career. Like, yeah, there's been an obstacle course there, but like you pulled off Battle Frog on television with ESPN, as you are, despite whatever obstacles are thrown your way, you're thriving in the world of sports as well. And I wanted to leave you with one last question.
Sure.
And Tom, I think one of the things that we hit upon, relationships and going beyond that, building up others, when it comes to telling other people's stories, and I know that you've done this on your podcast platform as well,
Yeah.
but what about you gets the most meaning out of telling someone else's story? What does that do for you? And how powerful and how much of what you do in media, in sports, is connected to a thrill of telling stories and bringing attention to other people and their achievements?
It's a really interesting question. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but the question that I ask a lot when I have the opportunity to tell somebody else's story, and that's from a television commercial all the way up to documentaries or whatever it is what does it mean to you? What did it mean to you to have that experience, and then try to figure out a way to convey that meaning to an audience. To me, that's the challenge. That's the interesting part of that is okay, not so much what happened to Bryan Fenley or what happened to Tom Davis, but who are they as a result of what happened to them. And so you've heard me mention the 51 Dons story several times, and this is the 70th anniversary of that season. And for people who don't know, I'll try to tell the story quickly, but the University of San Francisco's football team in 1951 was undefeated. They went 9-0, and they believed that they were bowl bound. And this is at a time, now it's different than it is today, Bryan, where there's 65 bowl games. There used to be just a handful of bowl games. And so the 9-0 USF Dons got an unofficial invitation to the Orange Bowl, with the stipulation that they would leave their 2 African-American players at home. And the team, without necessarily much prodding from administration, said, absolutely not. There's no way we're going to any bowl game where we can't have our entire team. Burl Toller and Ollie Matson, Ollie's in the Hall of Fame, were the 2 African-American players. And they basically said, these guys are our brothers, and we're not going to leave them on the side and go do something with them that, frankly, we wouldn't be 9-0 without them. And so they turned down an invitation, unofficial though it was, to the Orange Bowl, thinking that they would get another invitation. Well, that other invitation never came. And as a result, remember, this is, Korean War times, this is a private school, enrollments are going down. They ended up dropping football. So they go 9-0 and then don't play a Division I game again, for, another 20, 25 years. They brought football back for a minute at USF in the 70s or 80s, but that story is really not so much about that event as it is about what happened to these guys throughout their lives. These guys stayed in each other's lives, forever until they all passed away, and there's still a few of them that are still alive. But so Pete Rozelle, maybe one of the greatest innovators in the history of professional football, was the sports information director at USF in 1951. So he's a part of what's happening, right? And he's the guy who really got Ollie Matson All America honors, because he went and drove Grantland Rice to a game, the USF Fordham game. He drove Grantland Rice to the game so that he could see this kid Ollie Matson play. Um, you know, and and so then things happen in these guys' lives, right? Some of them go off to play professionally. Bob St. Clair, Gino Marchetti, Ollie Matson, all three Hall of Famers. All these guys. These guys go off into a professional career. Burl Toller, who was maybe the best player on the team. This is what the guys on the team say. He injured himself in the college all-star game. They used to play the college all-stars against the NFL champions, and he injured his knee in the college all-star game. And so at that time, knee injuries were career ending. And so he ended up injuring his knee and ended up basically ending his career. So he never played professional football. But he went back to school. He became the first, African-American secondary school principal in the city of San Francisco. Did a lot of really incredible things. And then in the 60s, Pete Rozelle says, you know what, we need to integrate officials, referees. And so he made Burl Toller the first African-American field official in any team sport. He was a line judge for years and years in the NFL. And so again, these relationships, these guys who cared so much about each other, that's what that story was about. And so, when I think about, to hopefully answer your question, when I think about what does it mean when you have the opportunity to tell somebody's story, it's something like that, where you're like, wait a minute, this story is not so much about football as it is about how much these guys loved and cared about each other. Johnny Mathis, who I'm a huge Johnny Mathis fan, but Johnny Mathis did voiceover for that documentary because he was friends with Ollie and Burl. He sang at Ollie's wedding before he was the Johnny Mathis. When he was just Johnny Mathis guy trying to make it in music, he sang at Ollie's wedding. And so he was like, yeah, these guys were bigger than life. This was just the greatest story. And he had stories about those guys, that we didn't know. And he had stories about the relationships that, that team had and those individuals had, and it goes even deeper than that too, Bryan, because it's like, you talk to their families, you talk to their kids, you talk to their wives. They were all connected by this, maybe by this one event, in their lives, but they also looked at it and said, you know what, we're not going to be defined by this. Like we're going to go do great things, regardless of whether or not somebody believes we're, worthy of the Orange Bowl or frankly, any other bowl. And so I'm always sort of looking for the idea of like, what does it mean? And how are you different as a result of whatever it is that happened to you? So when it happens, it's pretty cool. And fortunately, it's happened to me at least a few times in my career, and hopefully it'll happen a few more times before I retire or get put out to stud or shot or whatever it is they do to horses when they get really old. But hopefully I'll have a few more chances to do that. But that's kind of always what I'm looking for, is just that, what does it mean? And what can we learn from it? And 70 years later, that story is as relevant as it was in 1951.
Clearly, it means a lot to you. And I think that when you put the storytelling out in the form and the fashion that you do, it probably for you, it just makes you feel so alive, especially when you're hitting on the magnitude of stories that you're hitting on. And when you dig deep, and like you said, it's not about the football, it's about the relationships, the struggle, perseverance. I can't think of anything, and I would totally think that you would feel the same way, Tom, that there has to be nothing, very little more rewarding than telling these stories of triumph, when you have that opportunity, and then to see how many people are able to then learn about a story that didn't know about it, and to know that you might not have been there, but you helped bring more attention to it. And that's another source of pride that I think would go on to the fact of the matter of you being a storyteller and how much it means to you. Tom Davis, I took way too much of your time. I know
No,
you have
no,
a
it's great.
you have so many things going on. I I'm speechless in the fact that I loved your storytelling in this conversation. And I encourage everybody to go out and watch 51 Dawns. You'll
You're
leave a
gonna have to
change.
look hard for it. It's hard to find, but
It's
it's out there.
it
If nothing else, just acquaint yourself with that story and
yes.
think about what these, you know, kids really. I mean, 18 to 22-year-old kids. Gino Marchetti had been to World War II, so he was a little bit older. But just think about 1951 and what these guys did in the moment. And the statement that they made, um, it's incredible. I would love to think that I would have that presence of mind. Even now, I certainly know I don't think I had that presence of mind at 18 or 19 or 20 to do what those guys did. But you know, I just hope people, whether they watch my film or whether they learn it some other way, I hope people become acquainted with that story, because I think it's just, it says everything about, um, who we can be as people, as races, as everything else, that is involved within that story, who we can be as friends, who we can be as, members of our community. I just think it's just the coolest story, and hopefully people get a chance to check it out. And it was a real honor to spend some time with the few members of that team that were left, and the families of those who had gone before, and to be able to tell that story, and to have them sort of allow us in and allow us to be a part of that, and say, okay, we're gonna try to understand this in a way that we can, it was 2014, but we're trying to tell that story in a present day sense, and the fact that they let us in and they allowed us to do that. I'm still as amazed by the grace that the family and the players showed to people that they didn't know. I didn't go to USF. I had no connection to that story other than I just thought it was a cool story. So the fact that they let us in and they let us do what they did with it, is a testament to those guys who I can't say enough good things about.
I don't think I can say enough good things about you, and the fact that you look at that piece, and that has to be one of the defining moments of your career. And in the lead up to people watching 51 Dawns and acquainting themselves
Mhm.
with that, this was an opportunity for folks to acquaint themselves to you, which you come across as someone who is inspirational, giving back, loves to tell stories, and doesn't give himself enough credit for his achievements. Your wife might, razzle you a little bit when you get home about not doing this task, but let's be honest, you get stuff done. And the fact that you had time for this really means a lot to me. Tom Davis with the Big West, Cod Looking Incorporated, adjunct professor. He does it all, and he does it with so much pride. I am Bryan Fenley. Tom, really appreciate you doing this.
Bryan, thanks. I appreciate it. It's always good to see you, and I appreciate that you thought enough of me to have me on your podcast.